Greetings to our listeners and welcome aboard episode 56 of the Six Sports Podcast. Sergio here along with Igor. Special edition, hey, 2 recordings in a week. That means that there's got to be some newsworthy stuff. And I believe there was earlier this morning. The brain trust of the Toronto Maple Leafs gathered for a news conference to tell you all about the fantastic changes that could be coming, or at least alluding to maybe some more changes. But that's what we're here for, right, buddy? We are here to navigate the waters and give our opinion on what I think was a whole bunch of horse shit. But anyways, we can get into that.
There's some spicy takes, little read between the lines.
Read between the lines stuff,
yeah.
Have I reached a point where maybe I'm just so smitten and so negative that it's just like all I hear is blah, 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 blah.
Maybe. Right? But yeah. You've also, to be fair, preached correctness more often than not. I'll be fair to you.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Little pat on my own back. Yeah. It's not about that. Okay. What do we have teed up here? We've got some clips from today.
Yeah.
So at the news conference, obviously, was Keith Pelley, who's taken over as CEO of MLSE. Brendan Shanahan, who will remain as president of your Toronto Maple Leafs, and general manager Brad Treliving. What was the was it the Dangle podcast that had the funny name for the three of them?
Tree living, tree laughing, tree loving.
Yeah. Who's tree loving though? Is that Shanahan?
I think it's just live life, whatever the
I got it. But it's just a reference. Okay. Listen, let's go into a couple clicks here. Clips, not clicks. Keith Pelley opened up the press conference, and he had a couple of good points. This was part of Pelley's opening statement.
And with that title brings the heavy responsibility of overseeing the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I relish in that opportunity. And at the core of that responsibility is the real reason I came back to Toronto. And that is to win. Good is simply not good enough.
Oh, Igor.
I like it.
Good. That right in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's time.
Good is simply not good enough.
No more burning boats. Let's elevate and rise above.
Wow. No fucking duh, Keith. Good is simply not good enough. Well, I mean, listen, somewhere in Leafs Nation rests a fan or two or three that is probably sitting there saying, well, finally, they said it. They said it. Good is not good enough. There's always that underlying belief that, ownership doesn't really care. Ownership.
As long as the money's coming in, right?
And I can flip back and forth on that argument. I can. And when we recorded earlier this week, we talked a little bit about how the NHL is the one league where management is typically conservative, like across the board. It's a generalization, but it's a historical generalization. You don't typically see a lot of crazy changes to teams in the NHL. There's no appetite for going over the top or players coming out demanding trades. It's not a thing in the NHL like it is in the other leagues. And with that thinking, I mean, it's really easy to say, yeah, new CEO, but he's keeping Shanahan, who's been here forever and a day, and this has all failed under his watch. So there's really no appetite to change things. And why? Well, the one good thing that Shanahan has done in this era is establish one of the better streaks of regular season hockey in Maple Leaf history. And with that comes the business side of it. Increased sponsorship. With sponsorship comes the increased dollars of that sponsorship demand. They obviously never have a problem selling out tickets, right? But ticket prices continue to go up every year, and people continue to invest in it, right? So there's the business, there's the business aspect that can never be ignored. But I always lament that at least 1/3 of this ownership, at least 1/3, I think, cares about playoff hockey, because they invested $5 billion in exclusive rights to NHL. And you can say whatever you want at the end of the day, but I think that Rogers does give a flying fadoo, if you will, an ode to Bob McCown, if the Leafs are in the playoffs and if the Leafs make a deep run.
Absolutely.
Because in the history of that contract, the Leafs have gotten out of the first round once. It matters to Rogers. You can't, nobody can tell me any differently. They care. Bell might not care because to them, they're not invested in that property.
Well, they should care because once Bell Let's Talk runs around or comes around, it's just going to be a bunch of Leaf fans calling with grievances, right?
But I should say that they don't care. Like the Tenenbaum and the Bell aspect of it, they still stand to benefit from the gate revenues and the merchandise sales and everything as the Leafs go deeper in the playoffs. But the real bread and butter of that return comes from the TV property side. When Rogers is able to say, hey, you want to run a commercial during this Leaf game? Well, now it's round 3. That's going to cost you $1 million. And oh, it's the Stanley Cup final. It's going to cost you $4 million. Like, that's relative. So Rogers does care. But with that though, like you almost, is there the appetite to do something so crazy? Like I said earlier this week, where God forbid, you might have to take a step back before you can take 2 steps forward. And that it's never seemed like there's an appetite for that. But then you hear a CEO like Pelly come out and say, like it's good is not good enough. Like I take that and it's like, okay, all right, that's fine. Like, but what else is he supposed to say?
Well, to me, I treat it like regular season success is great, but it's not good enough because obviously the ultimate goal is to win a Stanley Cup and have playoffs or minimum playoff success, which we also don't have. So, would we love some conference finals appearances? Absolutely. I would see that as a giant win for the organization. Hopefully we'll get there. Obviously the end goal is the cup, and that's when money literally will pour from the sky. The clouds will open up and green dollar bills. And I do say green because nobody cares about Canadian dollars. Dollar bills will
20s.
come out.
It could be 20s.
It could be 20s, but
could be 20s. Okay.
So
Keith Pelly had another interesting comment that
he did
that you liked. It was a line. You liked the line.
I liked the line. It was a great line.
Here's Keith Pelly after a reporter. I forget what the question was. That's another question. But Keith Pelly had a response, and here's that response.
The fans here not only deserve but demand a championship, and there's no complacency. We're not here to sell jerseys. We're here to win, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to do that.
We're not here to sell jerseys, buddy. We are not here to sell jerseys.
That's because we've been selling them since 1967.
Because we've sold enough of them.
For 67 years, which is this year is the 67th year. And it's not good enough.
Whoa. Back up a second. Yeah. This year,
2024 is 67 years from 1967.
Well, why didn't they win this year then?
It's too magical. I don't know. It would have been too magical.
Why did I never do that mathematical calculation?
I don't
Holy
know
shit.
why you didn't.
No, wait a second. They won the cup
in 67.
In
Okay,
67.
So 68. Fine. It's
No.
Yeah.
Hold on. So doesn't that make next year's playoffs the 67th anniversary?
Sure. Fine.
Oh, you stumbled upon it. It's written in the stars. I'd have to do the math on that. Listen, on the Keith Pelly stuff, I'm not going to, again, it's not to be dismissive of it. He's been in the position for a number of weeks. What's he supposed to say?
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
Unity and skill, and what was the other?
Well, he did mention that unity and chemistry is important.
Yes.
And I think that's a short way of him saying we're not departing from Shanahan at this point because there's unity and chemistry between him and Tree Living. But a lot of this rests on the shoulders of Shanahan. And that I'm not going to let it escape. But before I open up a can of whoop ass on that guy, I think we should at least hear what our remaining president of the Toronto Maple Leafs had to say in his opening remarks during the press conference earlier today. This is Brendan Shanahan.
The reality of the situation is the ultimate responsibility is on me. The accountability is on me. Our playoff results have not been good enough. That's on me. The results that we've had in the playoffs, our players know, we know, I know, they're unacceptable. They're unacceptable to our fans, and they're unacceptable to all those that support the Toronto Maple Leafs. We do an analysis at the end of every season. We look at our team and we look forward and we look for ways to be better. And we do that every year. In the past, I believe that there are times where you talk about patience. And I still believe that there are times where patience is the suitable call. However, when you see patterns persist and the results don't change, you have to adjust the way that you think about things.
Mm-hmm.
We will look at everything this summer, and we will consider everything this summer.
Oh man, I am burning inside my soul for these comments. Now, first off, Tree Living made similar type comments last year when he got introduced as the GM, right? Tree Living last year when he had his introduction kind of spoke out of both sides of his mouth. Talked highly about the four, talked glowingly about what an opportunity it was for him to walk into a situation that has talent like that, but then spoke out of the other side of his mouth. But we'll look at everything. We know what happened last offseason. Like, it's become crystal clear. And we know that in the end of it, after the GM switch, that it has been reported multiple times that there was a phone call from Shanny to Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, essentially saying, you guys aren't going anywhere. So here we are 1 year later. And now you can read the tea leaves. They're open for business. The problem is they are 1 year late at minimum. We can argue semantics. You and I have argued semantics before.
Yes.
On some of these decisions, they could be 2 years late. They could be 3 years late. But at the very, very base, at its minimum, they're 1 year late. And they're 1 year late because a whole bunch of stupid no movement clauses have now come into effect for the players that Leafs Nation would like to walk out the door. And that's going to affect how you're going to do business, right? For a number of reasons. Well, we'll get to that in a second. It is unquestionably my stance that the vast majority of the decisions that Shanahan has made in his guidance and leadership in his era have been poorly timed. Piss poor in timing. Either being too early or, in this case, in my opinion, being too late. His timing sucks. It sucks. And for the clapping that you might want to do for some of the things that he's done for the organization, and I won't ignore that, this organization finally took a look in the mirror when Brendan Shanahan came on board and convinced this ownership that the only path forward to truly building a sustainable winner is to tear it down. All the things that the previous general managers and the previous presidents did not want to do for whatever reason.
Well, no, I think they did. I think Berkey wanted to, but I don't think he was allowed to.
Well, then Berkey needed a louder voice. Honestly, then he needed a louder voice, and Berkey's got a pretty loud voice.
Pretty loud, yeah.
Whatever the case, it was finally with Shanahan's guidance that they went ahead and did that, and that can't be ignored. Like, I'm going to say that, right? It was under his guidance that this team brought in, at the time, Lou Lamoriello to be their general manager. And that was done shortly after announcing, at that time, Mike Babcock to be the coach. And when you look at the beginning of the timeline, because that's when it is, right at that point, when you know that very first season under both of those guys, that this team is going to finally do the tank, okay? They had just narrowly missed out on Connor McDavid at the draft lottery the season before. They had 3 of the 4 lottery numbers. One ping pong ball goes in the right direction. Connor McDavid's a Toronto Maple Leaf. Doesn't happen. They still walk out with Mitch Marner at that draft. Not bad, right?
Yeah.
Not bad. They already had Nylander. Riley had been drafted years before that. And now they were going into the 2016 season with the ultimate prize being Austin Matthews, right? And they were going to tank. And they did that. And the lottery balls fell the way of the Toronto Maple Leafs that year. And Austin Matthews is soon to be drafted. And he's drafted. And the Leafs go first season in the Austin Matthews era. I mean, first game, he scores 4 goals. Okay, can't forget that stuff.
In a loss.
In a loss. In a loss. He almost had 5 in overtime that night against Ottawa, but that's okay. And the turnaround is quick and vicious. The Leafs make the playoffs that year. Have a really good showing as a wild card team against Washington. And you could not talk to a Leaf fan, a member of the media, a radio personality, a freaking magazine editor. Nobody was saying anything other than it is a matter of time before this team wins a Stanley Cup.
And not one. It was multiple. Like, there was
maybe multiple.
Hockey News or
something. Hockey News.
Released.
I remember the magazine, the cover of the magazine.
Yeah, it was like, it's not one, it's multiple.
It's how many.
How many, right. Yeah.
Okay. So things are off swimmingly in that era. Next season, Leafs come back again. There's a loss to Boston in the playoffs. A stinging one, right? Another one of those game 7s. And things don't go well.
This is a recording.
This is a recording. And with that loss, it is the end of Lou Lamoriello's 3-year contract. Here's where things go into the fucking shitter in terms of Brendan Shanahan being too early or too late on his decisions. You knew at that point that the Leafs were grooming the next general manager, either Mark Hunter or Kyle Dubas. And if you read enough of the behind-the-scenes stuff, Dubas was Shanny's guy. There was a rumor, if you recall back, Colorado had actually tried to approach the Leafs in an attempt to poach Kyle Dubas to be the general manager of the Avs. And the Leafs rejected it. So the tea leaves might have suggested that Dubas was going to be the guy at some point. So here we are in the summer of 18, after that stinging Game 7 loss, and Lamoriello needs to be extended, or should have been extended, or something should have happened. Instead, he's effectively told to step down as general manager, become an advisor on April 30th of 18. And 2 weeks later, Kyle Dubas is named general manager of the Leafs. Oh, Serge, why are you sticking? Why is there such a sticking point? Like, why is that relevant? That offseason, William Nylander was due an extension. His entry-level contract had ended.
Mm-hmm.
And Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner were both 1 year away from their entry-level deals finishing. In a vacuum, all three of them could have been extended that offseason. Nylander needed the contract, but being 1 year out, both Matthews and Marner could have been extended. And there were rumors that in a perfect world, the Leafs were going to step up to the podium and Kyle Dubas was going to deliver a news conference with all three of them sitting there to talk about the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs, all of them now under long-term contract. Well, Brendan Shanahan had just handed the keys to... Doesn't matter what you want to call it. In the NHL, he's a rookie general manager. I get it. He was general manager of Sault Ste. Marie. Great. Fantastic. Now, no one's going to argue the hockey knowledge here. I'm not here to do that. But in the NHL, he's a rookie GM. And he handed him the keys. Handed him the keys in an offseason that now, in hindsight, changed everything for this organization. William Nylander and his agent go to task on Dubas. If we don't get our number, we're sitting out. And if you recall, he did that until December of that year. And effectively, that whole situation with Nylander kind of created a block because it was pretty much believed that Marner was going to get a higher number than Nylander was, and Matthews was going to get a higher number than Nylander was. And maybe you don't want to get those contracts done before the Nylander contract, because then that's just going to give him added fuel to try to argue for even more money. So I say, had they left Lamoriello as the general manager for that particular offseason, one more offseason, give me one more offseason, Lou, and you're going to hand the keys to this guy, okay? You're going to hand the keys to Dubas. You have the godfather of the NHL taking it through it. And this isn't me advocating for Lamoriello like he's the smartest GM in the world.
Yeah, he
hasn't done a stand-up job in Long Island. But when it comes to contract negotiations, with all due respect, I would have rathered the experienced voice of the godfather in the room than handing the keys to the rookie general manager. And what ended up happening, I think, completely screwed up the timeline for the Leafs. Completely. Because if the William Nylander camp tries to pull that shit with Lamoriello, and they may have already been doing that, because arguably speaking in all this, Lou Lamoriello could have extended Nylander the season before, right? But Nylander hadn't really earned anything yet. He hadn't done anything of relevance yet in the NHL. So Lamoriello let the contract go. But it's my point that I would have rather had Lamoriello arguing that deal. Because if they try to pull that shit with Lou, you think that Lou's caving in December to bring the player back? Lou Lamoriello looks at Nylander and says, you could sit your ass out, buddy. You're going to take the deal that's on the table, or you're not getting anything from the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you're either sitting out for a year, and too bad for you, or I'm going to trade your ass. I can promise you that's what would have happened. And I'm not saying it's the right or the wrong thing, but in that, I can almost guarantee that Marner and Matthews would have been extended, would have been locked up. And I bet you my house, even though there is no way to prove it, that the dollar values on their contracts, because they were being done a year earlier, would have almost assuredly been lower than what they ended up at on those post rookie level contract deals. I don't think Matthews was going to get 11. I don't think that Marner was going to get 10.5. But to boot, I can also tell you that on July 1st, I don't think that Lou Lamoriello was going to try to make John Tavares a Toronto Maple Leaf.
That's big.
But all of that stuff happens. Nylander goes to war with Dubas. Dubas doesn't win that war, in theory, right? That goes into December. Matthews and Marner are not extended a year early in that window. Now you're into the season. They're not negotiating. Why negotiate in season? That particular season, 18-19 season, they both have good years. So it would be in their best interest to take it to the end of the season where they both cashed out at higher values than they should have been. If you remember the Marner stuff, it was rumored that had they taken care of it early, that what? It was going to be maybe $9 million? It was going to be a 9. It wasn't going to start with a 10, right?
Yeah.
So all of this stuff happens in 18 because Brendan Shanahan hands the keys to Kyle Dubas. That's fine. Okay. It's over and done with. It happens. It is what it is. And yeah, I get it. A lot of money in 4 players in the cap, blah, blah, blah. COVID played a factor in that. I'm not going to be dismissive to it. COVID stalled the salary cap. It didn't only affect the Leafs, but it affected the way that Pridham and Dubas were putting together this roster because they had an expectation. Not only the entire league had an expectation. The cap was going to skyrocket. Revenues were great. They were growing. The NHL was about to negotiate a new deal in the U.S. They had all the money already from Rogers. Seattle was coming into the league. Things were looking rosy. The idea was if there was no COVID, by this point, you'd probably be looking at a $100 million cap. Easily. Okay, it stalled. That's fine. That's not Shanahan's fault. So what's the next mistake? Well, he makes another, what I call, early mistake. You invest in Dubas for 5 years. You get to last offseason, right? And Kyle Dubas does a press conference. Doesn't have a contract extension yet. But you can read the tea leaves in Kyle Dubas's press conference. He's ready to make a move. And why was that relevant last offseason? Well, I alluded to it before. Mitch Marner would have had 2 years left on his contract, no restrictions.
Yeah.
None. The no movement clause kicked in July 1 of last offseason in 2023. Kyle Dubas could have looked at William Nylander. 1 year left in his contract. Does he want to extend him? The point was you could read the tea leaves that Dubas had an appetite to do something different. And it's crystal clear that Shanahan did not share that appetite. And I don't give a crap what Shanahan said in the immediate presser following his dismissal of Kyle Dubas, who just a few days before he was ready to extend. But because Kyle's...
We don't know that. He for sure had offers already on the table.
Listen. Something happened behind the scenes.
Yeah,
we understand that. That's been said. About power play, whatnot. The point is this. Dubas had an appetite that Shanahan did not. And Dubas's appetite was change. Shanahan's was not. Shanahan was still in the patience part of his evaluation. Shanahan makes a decision to part ways with Dubas. A new general manager comes in. And if you recall, when we got to last offseason, before Dubas was fired, and we were talking about the possibility as the decision was looming, I said my biggest fear of a change now, and I've always lamented this, was if the new guy walks in, the new guy's not making a change. Because if you inherit those players, you're going to want to see at least 1 year of them.
Yeah.
With your moves, your transactions, and all of that stuff.
It's just, that and your evaluation of them.
Absolutely.
Right? So.
And it just fucked up the entire timeline because you lost the ability to call 31 teams on the phone and say, Mitch Marner is available. What will you pay me? Now you get to this offseason and you don't have that ability. Now you have a player that controls the entire process. And while his name is the one that's been bandied about the most, right? You're not going to capture full value. And you could have captured more value. It's not suggesting that Dubas would have made the best trade. You don't know what that looks like.
Right.
But if we're now at a point where we're going to accept that they're going to do that, then they missed a glorious opportunity to do it, like I said, when 31 teams could have been involved. You don't have that anymore.
Well, what if we do a sign-in trade?
Doesn't matter.
Well, if he agrees to it, obviously.
But that's what I'm saying. So it's a player controls the process now. If Mitch Marner...
But hold on. It sounds like he's last year, according to Elliot Friedman, I believe, last year he was under the impression that this was it and maybe it's time to move on. This year, maybe he's still there. Obviously, it's gotten way worse. Like, he's not good with social media. He's not good with the outside noise, media in general. Maybe he's going to just be like, you know what? Like, yeah, I'm a hometown kid. This is my favorite team of all time. But I think it might be time to move on.
But he controls that process.
He does, yeah.
Mitch Marner is not, and his agent is definitely not, walking into a room with Brad Treliving and saying, okay, here's 10 teams.
It'll be like 2 teams. Yeah.
The Leafs would be fortunate if it was 2 teams.
Yeah.
Like that would be the biggest gift that Mitch Marner could give Toronto right now is 2 teams. Oh, and I say that, half swimmingly, because if he comes out and says the 2 teams are fucking San Jose and like, I'll take a trade to San Jose or LA. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just like, he can really back the Leafs into a corner here. And because he strikes me as a guy who gets really butthurt about stuff, he may just do it out of spite.
Okay, but hold on. Would San Jose be the worst? Like, they got first overall pick.
Well, you're not getting the first overall pick.
I don't know. Maybe you do. You're getting a top 10 talent in the NHL.
You're not getting the first overall pick because San Jose is going to go in and their entire thing is on, let's draft first overall. So that's not what you're getting from the Sharks. That's just, let's call it spit.
For the number 3?
Again, but the point is this. If Mitch Marner comes into a room right now, the ball is completely in his court. It's in his court. And people here, like in Leafs Nation, that are going to get butthurt throughout this whole process, because I know it's going to happen, have to understand that this is the right that they gave him. If you want to throw around no movement clauses like they're effing candy, okay, and the NHL does it, and the Leafs do it a lot.
The Muskoka 5, right?
This is the result of doing that. No, the Muskoka 5. Oh, God, let's remember that, Yeah, how much we herald Matt Sundin, but he didn't want to go anywhere. I don't want to go to a team halfway through the season. Yeah. Lets his contract expire, takes 5 months off, and signs with the Vancouver Canucks in January of that year. You piece of crap. Okay?
Yeah. That's back.
Yeah. Well, you want to talk about pissing me off. That's what happens when you give people this crap. And the Leafs had an exit last offseason, and they didn't take advantage of that. And that's under the guidance of Shanahan. And I don't care at the end of the day. Like, that's you, bud. That's on you. And they keep saving your job here. Brendan Shanahan should like send a check to each member of Leafs Nation. Like $1,000 check that says, I'm sorry because I fucked this all up. Because it's the truth. Okay? Now, Mitch Marner may be willing to do it. But what if he's not? What if he's not, Igor? What if he walks in the room and says, hey, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere.
I got silver lining for you.
Mm.
It's contract year, and you know what happens. 120 points, it's going to go down next year.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's good.
He's playing for the next 7 to 8 years of
Who
his life.
gives a shit about the regular season?
No, but I
don't care.
I'm sure the playoffs will also matter in his next
Oh, they're going to matter? Well, they're going to matter to him?
Or another team.
They matter to him?
For the next contract, it'll
No,
matter.
give me a break.
Come on.
Give me a break. Why? Matthews was fighting for an extension. What did he do in the playoffs last year? Nylander was fighting for an extension. Well, actually, Nylander
I think they both had pretty good.
Not good enough.
Well, not good enough, but
Matthews didn't score in round 2.
I don't think any. Did they even show up to round 2?
Okay, but that's
the quickest in and out. That was the revolving door of round 2.
But that's my point, right?
Yeah.
So, and we're gonna get to some comments from Tree Living that address that. But this is my point. Like, this is all under the Shanahan timeline. Like, this is one piss poor decision after another. One piss poor decision after another, in my opinion, that leads us to where we are today. And if I had a crystal ball, 10 years from now, we're going to look back on this entire era, and you're going to look at a much longer timeline. I'm trying to keep it within the frame here of the screen, a much longer timeline. And you're going to sit back. We're all going to sit back and say, I can't believe they didn't win a cup. Like, I can't believe they couldn't figure it out. And it all goes back to me to the start of that 28 season, that 18 season. That was it just got everything started off on the wrong foot.
Okay.
And now here we are today. And again, it's another bad decision last year. And here we are again, and now they're going to go, and here's what's going to happen. You're not going to get full value on a Marner deal. We have to live with that. You have to live with that, okay? And it goes back to what I said in our last recording. There needs to be a cultural shift on this team. And to really, really impact a cultural change on the team, you have to affect the nucleus. And that nucleus remains the 5, okay? You can walk away from John Tavares by extension of the fact that his contract is done next year. I have a hard time believing that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to make any sort of contract offer to John Tavares, even a lowball one, because that's a player who's not suited to be in your bottom 6 because of the way that he plays. And I don't think that you can have a slower version of John Tavares aging into 35, 36, and 37, making even $3-4 million on your team. And I don't even know, like, if he would take that low. So by reasoning of a contract expiry, that $11 million is going to be off the books. But it's not just about that. I look at other nucleus core pieces here, like Morgan Riley, like Mitch Marner. These are the names that are going to be bandied about the most this offseason, who control the process completely, both of them, in a trade. Which means that if they both only give you one team, like, that's what you got to deal with. Tree Living is probably looking at not looking at a very similar situation. He's probably looking dead into the same situation he had with Matthew Tkachuk in Calgary, where Matthew Tkachuk basically said, I'll go to Florida. And the Florida Panthers could kind of fit it if there was salary going back, and it looked like a decent move on paper, right? Like, I remember it. I was like, holy shit. He got back Huberdeau and Weegar for Matthew Tkachuk. That's amazing. He was backed into a corner. God bless. God, it basically derailed Calgary, right? There's other reasons why it happened.
Well, the extensions were the big thing, not the fact that he got them. It's the extensions, the money.
But you had to extend them, right? Because you didn't get anything like else from the deal. So, like, what if Marner turns around and says, because we talked about this, what if Marner turns around and says, yeah, there's one team I'll go to. I want to go to Vegas. Well, Vegas can't fit $10.5 million, right?
To give us
so it's not like you could do a futures deal with Vegas. You got to do a money in, money out deal, right? How does that benefit the team? Depending on who's coming. It's not. I don't think you're going to get a Mark Stone back or anything like that.
Yeah, we'll just get Jack Eichel.
Yeah, well, not going to happen, right? Yeah. So, but I'm using the example, right? Like, depending on the team, he can really back you into a corner here, right? Yeah. And then there's the point that, the true reality of this is that Marner's got to sit down with his wife and say, where are we going to go live the next 9 years of our life? Because it's going to be one season plus an 8-year extension that I'm hoping to cash in on. Unless Mitch is going to look to do something similar to what Matthews did, which is I want to do a 4-year extension and then try to get one more. But let's just assume that he's going to look for it. Like, where am I going to go spend the next 9 years of my life? I don't think that most players who put some thought into that are going to come up with a list of 5 teams. Like, I just don't think it's going to happen. So that's why when you said, does he give you 2? I said it would be a gift if he did, because at least you'd be able to play 2 teams against each other, right?
Yeah.
I just, like, I don't see it. And again, this is because under the guidance of Shanahan, they're 1 year freaking late on actually trying to make a move like this. So I don't sit here and clap my hands at what they say today.
Well,
I just look at it and say, well, you know what? It fucking took you long enough. Like, it took you long enough. Congratulations, dummies, because the rest of us have been seeing it for years.
Yeah.
Right? You preached a little bit too much patience. Yeah. Anyway.
I want to go back to your earlier comment.
Yes.
In regards to, we're going to look back at this time, yada, 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 right?
Yep.
And why didn't we get it done? But, like, we focus too much on the core 4, and I get it. They're the most expensive, the highest paid guys, and with that comes a certain, expectation and whatever. But the team always had holes. Like, name me a year we never had goaltending problems or
okay, but the cap plays a factor into that.
No, I get it. I'm not excusing the way they built the team,
right?
Okay, and I'm not excusing the guys on the ice, because at the end of the day, they're the only ones that could get it done, right?
Yeah.
But there were always holes. There's, last year post deadline probably was the most complete team ever, I would say, in the Shanahan era. We had fucking Ryan O'Reilly on our third line. Okay,
I agree with you.
Yes.
I agree with you.
And still couldn't get it done because goaltending, I guess, failed. Defensive lapses. Like, we have Morgan Rielly, who realistically not a true number 1, and has been cast as, because it's the only thing we got and the only thing we've had. And it's Morgan Rielly plus insert random name here every single year, right? And it's basically a different guy, and something works. And, like, I don't even know what happened with Ron Hainsey that 1 year. He went off for 20 goals and 70-something points. Like, God bless you, Ron Hainsey, for whatever you did, right? But again, it's like, it's not Ron Hainsey in his prime, right? It's Ron Hainsey. I've won my cup. I don't give a shit. I'm like 35 already. It's the twilight of my career,
Well, Riley found some success also last year playing with Luke Shen when he came over. Like, it kind of unlocked something and
past this prime.
Yeah,
right.
And
but
Riley he had his best playoff.
He had a great playoff, and the comebacks and all those crazy goals, that was good. Like, I'm good with that, obviously. And
listen, you're basically at the end of the
he disappeared.
But at the end of the day, you're addressing playoff failures. Like the stuff that happens there, coaching, which again, like I lament that these like these areas, right? So Treliving comes in. Obviously, he recognizes as an outsider what, at least in his mind, what has ailed this team.
Mm-hmm.
Tries to do what he can last offseason, already with what I feel was an understanding that he wasn't going to get to actually trade the core.
Right.
Okay. Short of a team calling on the phone and offering something so unbelievable that it was like, oh, well, we can't pass this up. Right. Like, it wasn't happening. Again, like we go, like Shanahan made the calls. You guys are not going anywhere.
Right.
So when you have all that, and this new general manager that comes in and tries to put his touches on it, and let's see how that works. Like, I still feel that throughout the course of this season, there were missed opportunities to do things that would have given us better answers today. The coach is one of them.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And that, for me, that's on him, right? But I also blame Shanahan. Like, Shanny, did you go knock on the door at any one point, like after, like, mid-December, and say, maybe now's the time to do it? These are comments from Treliving that I'm going to play, talking about Sheldon Keefe, and a reason why this pisses me off. But here are these comments.
And I believe today, as I did that day, that keeping Sheldon here was the right call. This is a really good coach. This is a really good coach. It's an excellent person. The difficulty of this business is sometimes really good people and people that are good at their job have to be changed. And when I look back at the 11 months I spent with Sheldon the past year, I do consider him an excellent coach. This does not fall at his feet, and by no means do I want it to be taken that by making a change at the head coach position, that all arrows point at Sheldon. But I also couldn't just look at the past year in a vacuum. I'll talk a little bit in terms of the review of the season, but I had to take into consideration the totality of Sheldon's time here. And I felt, and at the end of the day it was my decision, I felt strongly that a new voice was needed. We had gotten to a place where just a new voice was needed.
You needed, go ahead.
I just want to, so the first part was right. He's a good coach. Like, in terms of, in terms of his winning record, winning percentage, I think he's got the highest winning percentage of any coach with minimum 300 games. Okay. So that part's right. The part where it kind of when he said, this isn't all on his feet, it's like, no, this is definitely, like, the playoffs is still his job, right? Like, season doesn't stop at game 82, unfortunately. So,
well, it's not all at his feet. It's not at the players' feet as well. Right. But Mr. General Manager, it's also at your feet too.
Well, the
Leafs went through a struggle this year. Now, I get it. It wasn't necessarily a coaching struggle, right? Some of the players got off slow. Obviously, I'm not referencing Matthews or Nylander. They came out of the gate hot, right? Bertuzzi had struggles early in the year. Domi was struggling to find his way on the team. These things are understandable, I guess, right? New system, new team. That's fine. Marner didn't get off to a resounding start this year. The defense looked like absolute ass. Now, I get it. Like, this is personnel stuff. It's not all on the coach, right? But sometimes when things are not working, replacing the coach is the easiest thing. But more so for this season in Toronto, I think it was a massive opportunity missed. Here we go again. Bad timing on decisions. When the Leafs got to January, there was easily a reason to say, we're going to move on from the coach. Okay? If for nothing more, to simply bring in a new voice, give that new voice 40 games before the playoffs start, let that new coach go into the playoffs, and if it chokes again in round one, then you really have all your answers. You really have all your answers then.
Yeah.
Tree Living has his coach in place, who's now gone through a playoff already with these guys, and can really come back and say, yeah, it's a nucleus thing. Like, it needs to be changed. Instead, it's just another crutch that they have. Well, now I look back on the totality of the Keefe situation, and a decision needed to be made. What, fucking 6 months later, you look at the totality? What, the totality was any different when you decided to keep him on? Okay, you didn't want to make a change at the beginning of the season. That's fine.
He was also new.
That's fine, but you had every excuse to make a change in season, even if it's just for the sake of making a change, because teams do that, okay? Shit's not going swimmingly. It happened in Edmonton this year. We're just going to make a change. And the change happens, and all of a sudden, like almost like invariably, it happens almost all the time. Teams have a little jolt, okay? I'm not suggesting that jolt was going to turn into a Stanley Cup for Toronto, but it puts a new voice in place at that point, and that new voice gets to see what the hell is going on in the room and make an assessment. Now, instead, you're going to hire a new coach who hasn't been through a war with these guys, who's then going to come in and give you an opinion on if you should trade one of them or not? Are you crazy? Are you crazy? How's that even a thing? That's ridiculous, in my opinion. That's just such a freaking failure by these guys. And it really pisses me off. And it's another missed freaking opportunity because it should have freaking fired Keefe earlier in the season. It should have happened. And you didn't need any more reason other than the fact that we just feel like we need a new voice then. No, let's keep him. And get to the playoffs. Now here we are again with the same stupid shit. Oh, now it's time for a change. F off, man. Let's go. This is what I'm saying. It's too conservative. We're too conservatives with the freaking decisions.
Another missed opportunity was for you to have that rant on our newest Into the Lion's Den or whatever segment.
Oh, I might have a rant to finish this. We'll see where I'm at.
Okay.
One last clip here. Tree Living finishes with these comments when a reporter asks him about the goalies that they have seen in the playoffs over the course of the last few years. Obviously not, Tree Living has only been here for one playoff, but he just talked about the Leafs and their playoff failures and running into goalies. And Tree Living talked a little bit about the team, the scoring, and the goalie situation here in Toronto. Here's that clip.
I think there is when I've gone back now and kind of looked at it, there are some, there's some similar touch points, right? One of them is we haven't scored enough. When I looked at this situation and spent some time over the course of the summer is, we wanted to try to, this team has scored in the regular season, hasn't scored in the playoffs. We increased our scoring in the regular season this year. I think we were the second highest scoring team in the NHL. We were the number one scoring team in the East. We increased, I think, our total goals for by 20 last year, or this year over the previous year. One of the things I wanted to try to do is it wasn't total goals, it's how the goals are scored in the playoffs. You score differently in the playoffs than you do in the regular season. So is it systematic? Is it personnel? I think most of us in this room would understand it's more difficult. You're defended harder. You're played against harder in the playoffs. So we haven't scored enough. Our special teams haven't been good enough. And to your question, we seem to be turning the other team's goalie into the first star every night. So I think it's twofold. We've got to find a way, systematically, personnel-wise, to find a way to score more in the playoffs and score those goals that are scored in the playoffs. And as far as our goaltending, Joe, I've got faith in Joe. Now, like everybody else, there's questions. There's questions that, why the biggest question with Joe is he's gotten injured a lot. We have to dig into that. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes bad luck happens. Is there a training issue that we have to deal with? Do we need to change something in his off-ice routine? All those things is what we have to dig into. I believe in Joe as a goaltender. We have to support Joe. Ilya's contract's up, but we certainly have to try to put ourselves in a position where we don't have the second best goaltender in each of these series. But I think it's a function of both sides, not just our goaltending, but what we do to make things difficult on the other team's goaltender.
Oh, well, Brad, what would we take away from that? Basically, an admission that Samsonov's contract done. Didn't sound like Samsonov was coming back.
Yeah, like fuck off. That was the nicest fuck off ever.
But it does sound like his eyes are on goaltending, right?
Well, they should be, because how many Vezina Trophy winners do we have to play every year, right?
Apparently.
We turned a Zamboni driver into the next coming of Patrick Waugh.
Zamboni driver turned into the next coming of Patrick Waugh. A Carey Price, whose career was done, was resurrected in one bubble playoffs thanks to the Leafs. Jonas Korpisalo, who can't stop.
Unbeatable.
Can't stop a puck. Okay, not a beach puck. Jonas Korpisalo can't stop a beach whale in Ottawa. All right, unbeatable in a series against Columbus. Tuukka Rask, Now some of these goalies are actually relevant, right? But it's true, though. It's true. Our offense makes these guys the first freaking star every night. Sergei Bobrovsky.
Hey, he's resurrected his whole career.
Did he?
I think so.
He can thank Toronto for that.
Well, sure. Yes, he can.
Because he walked out of round one against Boston last year with the goals against average of 3-something. And then the Leafs come into town, and it's like, oh, game one, we lose. Couldn't beat them low. That's tough.
Couldn't beat him high. We only shot low.
No.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Couldn't beat them low.
Yeah.
Game two. Oh, damn it. We can't beat them low. Game three. I have an idea. Let's try to beat them low. Game four. Let's try to beat them low. But we win. And we get to game five. But let's try to beat them low. You got to figure out how to fucking put goals in the playoffs, man. And it's not just 5-on-5 play; it's power play. And they addressed it today. They actually said it at one point in the presser. The power play has really only been successful in one playoff. That was round one against Tampa last year. It's been anemic in every year. We talk about it consistently. Special teams derails this team come in the playoffs. Teams figure out how to defend these guys. Now, part of the problem has and continues to be Morgan Riley on the point because he can't shoot. So teams cheat. Teams cheat on the Leafs like they don't cheat on other good power plays. A good team is going to figure out this power play, and they do it every year on how to shut it down. They get to be merchants against lesser teams in the regular season, and it helps make the power play 3rd or 5th or 7th ranked or whatever. Yeah, we got a good power play, man. No, we don't. Because against good teams, it doesn't succeed that often. Now, for whatever reason, it worked against Tampa last year. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the Lightning were tired, like legitimately tired. They had played a lot of hockey. That's what happens when you go to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. You're playing a lot of hockey, okay? And I think that the Lightning just ran out of gas. And when they're 4-on-5, it just, the legs weren't there. So the Leafs had some success.
Well, Vasilevsky wasn't a world beater either.
He wasn't a world beater.
Not
That's
until
fine.
like maybe game 6.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you play other good teams and they shut it down, right? So changes need to be made. We get that. There seems to be an admission of that at the end of the day. As a matter of fact, the truth of it is that Tree Living tried to change your power play quarterback earlier this year. He did.
He did, yeah.
Not the right person in bringing in Klingberg. Hindsight being what it is. But that was his attempt to change it, you know? Like Klingberg was brought in to be given the reins on PP1 because he could shoot the puck and thus give it a different look. And he had moments really, really early on in the season where he was on the power play and it was clicking. And then the hip, which was quite clearly not even 60%, affected the mobility and affected the player. And it just, it didn't work. But
right person, wrong time. Also, I would like to point out that I feel like it is a systems thing because they don't adjust. And I know we always talk about adjusting in the playoffs, but I feel like we don't adjust from the regular season tactic to the playoff tactic, where in the regular season, a player like Mitch Marner, why he's so successful is he's got a lot of room. And for a guy like Mitch Marner, he needs the room to see the game, to think the game, to weave and bob and make the crazy plays that he makes that makes him so successful. In the playoffs, there's no room, there's no time to think, and it's just like ugly grunt hockey, right? It's physical, and, you know, I'm not going to take anything away from them. We definitely showed up in the physicality department this year. Maybe a little bit too much to our detriment in the first couple games. But that's where I feel like the systems, and it's on the coaching, obviously, where we're lacking is the adjustment for playoff power play and penalty kill. Because you can't rely on the same things that gets you through the first 82 in the last 16 or however many, right? So I don't know. Adjustments.
You got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to adjust. Other teams seem to adjust to the Leafs. The Leafs can never adjust to whatever other teams are doing. And it's the same results consistently, especially in the last few years. Inability to score. Like you said, special teams. Goaltending is relative.
And sometimes you need a save.
Yeah. And the only thing that I took away from today is if I'm reading the tea leaves, there's an appetite to do something in net. Now, is he going to get the chance to do that? I don't know, because
I don't even know who's available.
The LA Kings don't have a goalie. The Anaheim Ducks don't have a goalie. The San Jose Sharks don't have a goalie. I'm just rhyming off the idea of Mitch Marner wanting to go to California. If he doesn't pick a place that's got a goalie, it's hard to make a trade. I can tell you this much. If it's last offseason, Mitch Marner for UC Saros?
Well, I was just going to say, what would be the appetite from the press?
I don't know, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe they don't have an appetite to do it.
But
Maybe
they should. They have a number one future.
Well, but he's not proven in the NHL level, right? So an ideal scenario is that you let that person play under someone else.
Yeah, but they can
But that's
sign
also-
a veteran guy to, teach him to be half decent.
There's not a lot of
They're not
goalies available
I
in the
understand, but
NHL.
they're not competing for a Stanley Cup, let's be honest, at this
I
stage
get
of the
it.
game, right?
I get it. But, it's, again, we put things in the position, you gave all the power to the players, and now you're going to look to those players to somehow help you out of this mess in a much different way than you thought that they were. They're not going to help you on the ice, so now you're going to beg for their help off the ice so that you can make some dramatic changes. And again, it's stupid timeline management by this team.
Yeah.
It's the reason why we're here. And it sucks. It sucks as a fan. It sucks as a fan because people are going to hear what they said today, and they're going to eat that shit up. They're going to eat it. They're going to say, hey, yeah, I'm on board. I'm on board because this team's finally willing to make changes. They're late to the party, and I'm telling you, there's no one step back, two step forward scenario coming out of this. If you're listening, believe me, the Leafs are going to lose a Marner deal. You have to accept it. Accept it today. The Leafs are going to lose a deal. It's a needed cultural change. I just hope that with that freedom, they're able to do something impactful with those dollars. And if that something isn't available this offseason, do not commit to people in free agency just for the sake of spending the money. Don't give a mediocre option a 3-4 year contract, which thus throws that money away where it doesn't need to be thrown. Get to this offseason, try to make a change to the nucleus. Be careful how you spend that money. If the options out there for you are not great, only look to bring guys in on a 1-year deal. So that way you are not handcuffed for tomorrow.
Yeah, but you're also assuming that the guys are going to be okay with getting a 1-year deal. You don't know what the players are looking
away
for.
From that option then.
Okay.
My point is that if you've got a guy you really like in free agency, like if it's a guy that Tree Living really, really likes, that's one thing. But if you're looking at, these would be interesting options. I wonder how they would turn out. And you go to the guy and you say, it's got to be a 1-year deal. And he says, no, we only want 3. You got to walk away from it because that's going to hinder the future of this team, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see $11 million come off the books so that we could go get $3.5 million players. But the guy that you're giving $3.5 million to is really like, a guy that maybe shouldn't get $1.5 million. And now you've committed to that guy for 4 years. And that guy's not even playing on your third line after next season. Like that's bad cap management. They've got to be really, really careful in a really tricky situation and trying to navigate all of this. And I'm just preaching to the people in Leafs Nation that are listening. You better temper your expectations because it's really, really hard to get anything of real value out of these situations. You've got some real. I don't think very highly of Mitch Marner as a person to begin with. He just rubs me the wrong way. I think that you've got a guy who's going to act like a real jerk in this situation, and I think that's going to affect what the Leafs can get. But
how confident are you that we will spend the money correctly, seeing as the Kampf deal was kind of inflated, the Ryan Reeves deal was 2 years too long?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
4.5. Okay, that's really low.
It is really low. Yeah.
Well, now you're just preaching that you're that's it. We're living in failure. You're expecting failure.
That's but I've already told you that. I've already said the crystal ball, it's 2035, and I'm looking back on this entire timeline, and I'm just shaking my head.
It's hopes and prayers. That's what we're at. We're on hopes and prayers right now.
I don't believe in the people that are leading this team, but all I can do is sit back and watch the car crash at this point, right?
Well, I hope
if it doesn't, great. Yeah. But they're going to get an opportunity to do something. At least it sounds like it. So let's see what happens. I just hope that like, again, I said it on the last episode, man, the kids, the couple of kids that can give us hope, the OHL MVP who in game 1 of the championship round put up 5 points, I think, the other night. Okay.
Is that like Mitch Marner light?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know what he is, but he is a pimple-faced kid who needs time to mature. But I'm getting to training camp next season, and I am giving him all the rope in the world to see if he can make this team. Yeah. Same with Fraser Minton, right? And then I'm getting into this offseason, and I'm trying to figure things out. I'm trying to figure things out with the roster, and I hope that Tree Living looks at this whole thing and says, okay, maybe, a $2.5 million center is not ideal on the fourth line. And David Kampf shouldn't be playing your third line. Kalle Järnkrok, is that money that can be better spent somewhere else? Don't hate the player. I'm not suggesting that, but
he does do a lot of skating around and not enough scoring in the playoffs.
Well, the totality of everything needs to be looked at this point. Like, everything needs to be looked at. Some of it can get buried. I get it. Ryan Reeves is only a couple $100,000 on the cap if they want to bury him on the Marlies. Maybe Ryan Reeves stays. If you can adjust your cap situation throughout the entirety of the team, $1.3 million on Ryan Reeves doesn't kill you. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? So, but he's 38 next year. So it's like, so you only get slower with age is something that I've learned, right? And it's hit me hard. But again, I don't want to be the super negative guy, but for me, I'm not even being negative. Like, Igor, for me, I'm not being negative. I'm just being, like, in my eyes, this is realistical. I just see it this way.
Realistical?
Yeah. This is just reality, man.
Just made up a word.
It is. It's realistical to me.
Okay.
No, it is reality. To me, it's my reality. In my tunnel vision, this is how I see it. And I don't see a positive way out. Unless they're built out by the kids. And it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while for those kids. So that window for me right now is shut. It's cold outside. The window is shut, not open. No breeze
it opens once McDavid comes, the kids mature, boom, right?
Oh, my God. Connor McDavid of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
2028, Leafs win the Cup. 2028.
Will we get to hear Joe Bowen say this for a Connor McDavid goal?
Holy mackerel!
I would. Connor McDavid! Will Joe Bowen even be with the Leafs? Since you want to go into the Lions' den on that?
Sure.
Put Joe Bowen on TV.
That's right.
Okay? Put Joe Bowen on TV. What is this crap? I'm tired of everybody else. Anyways, we're done. I got nothing more to say. We're good. I got a Jays game to go to.
Yeah, you want to go in the Lions den for that?
Yeah, man. And a Jays game to go to. By the way, the Minnesota Twins have won 15 of their last 17 games. Things are looking up and up for the Jays in this weekend series.
15-2.
Maybe. Anyways, we're done. Listen, thank you for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, great. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, hit us up on Twitter. At the Six Sports. Tell me why I'm ugly. Tell Igor why he's ugly. Call us fat. Whatever. However you want to answer to us. And then, of course, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, or one of those things, we appreciate it. We love it. It's great. Yada, yada, yada. We will catch up with you the next time we record on the next episode. Have a good day, everybody.
See ya.